So a little more than 163 years ago, our Unitarian Universalist spiritual ancestor Henry David Thoreau spoke about wildness. Our village life would stagnate, he said, if it were not for the unexplored forests and meadows which surround it. We need the tonic of wildness. We must be refreshed by the sight of inexhaustible vigor, vast and titanic features, the sea coast with its wrecks, the wilderness with its living and its decaying trees, the thundercloud, the rain which lasts for 3 weeks. We need to witness our own limits transgressed. Now, I would argue that in the past several weeks, this need has been amply met. I would call the fourth largest city in America being underwater a transgression of human limits. I would call what is happening right now in Florida a transgression, as Irma breaks upon the American coastline and shows us what the most powerful Atlantic Ocean hurricane in recorded history can do. And here in Atlanta, we'll catch a little bit of it tomorrow and Tuesday. Our own human limits are like a red stop sign standing atop a slender metal pole, and the gale force winds just shred it. This is what we are witnessing. Thoreau, our spiritual ancestor, is trying to tell us something from all of 163 years ago, that we stagnate as human beings when we get overly sentimental and saccharine about nature. That nature is not just walks in the woods and garden flowers. Nature is also hurricanes and earthquakes and wildfires. And when we respect this fact to the point where we feel fear mixed in with awe, it is like a tonic to us, meaning that it comes to us as healing medicine. And thereby, says Thoreau, we are refreshed, or we are brought back to a state that is truer to our humanity. And that is what I want to talk about today, being more fully human to the degree we respect wildness and recognize it as a vital dimension of our earth home. It is the same sort of respect that you see in the cinematography of Emmanuel Lubezki, the way he filmed scenes of nature in the recent movie called The Revenant. And we saw some scenes of that a moment ago when the choir was singing. The landscape is the real star of the show, and humans are but small parts of the larger natural vastness, icy mountains, moody stormscapes, rushing rivers, snowy trees, piercing sunsets. Not people first, but the earth first, and people a smaller part of the larger whole. Respect. You hear it also in the words of the former president of the Czech Republic, Václav Havel, in his 1995 Harvard commencement speech. He says, we must divest ourselves of our egotistical anthropocentrism, our habit of seeing ourselves as masters of the universe who can do whatever we want. We must discover a new respect for what transcends us, for the universe, for the earth, for nature, for life, for reality. Our respect for other people, for other nations, and for other cultures can only grow. Are we using this? Yep. Our respect for the microphone. Oh, come on, I was getting into it here because it's Václav Havel. That's like awesome. Well, you see where he's going. Respect for all of these things can only grow from the humble respect for the cosmic order and from an awareness that we are a part of it, not the it, part of it. We share in it. Respect heals us. Respect returns us to our full humanity, and it makes of nature a true home for us. I do not know if the air remembers September or if the night remembers the moon, writes Burton Carley in his wonderful September meditation. To all the stanzas, perhaps we should also add, I do not know if the earth remembers shaking the seams of Mexico apart, or if the clouds remember how the land below heaved, roared, and to write other similar stanzas. And then there is the beautiful Carl Sandburg, his poem where he says, there is a wolf in me, fangs pointed for tearing gashes. There is a fox in me, there is a hog in me, there is a fish in me, and on and on. Maybe in all fairness, we should add, there is a hurricane in me. There is an earthquake in me. There are wildfires in me. Respect is about telling the whole story and facing it fully. Respect is simply being clear. Climate change intensifies nature's pre-existing wildness. Climate change is a force multiplier. There have always been storms, there have always been winds, there have always been surges, but climate change makes them increasingly bigger and damaging and expensive. As carbon dioxide from human activity continues warming the planet up, storms will deliver more rain. They will deliver higher winds, greater storm surges. Respect this truly, and it means we take it seriously. Nature is not just walks in the woods and garden flowers. It has wildness to it. And if we keep provoking it, worse things are around the corner. It is true, evolution has put tendencies in our minds that make it hard to grasp the danger. There is the frog in the kettle tendency, where we ignore gradual changes even as we're slowly being taken to an end point that basically means our doom. There's also the tendency to value the concrete over the abstract, and research has actually shown that the particular weather outside a person's front door can play a huge role in whether they believe or don't believe in climate change, even though the one is a terrible indicator of the other. These tendencies are a part of our evolutionary heritage, absolutely, and you know what? We need to get over it. We need to get over that. Perhaps fear mixed in with awe can do that for us. Perhaps this is a time to gorge on pictures of Harvey and Irma and the aftermath. It's a form of Thoreau's tonic that tastes terrible all the way down, but in the end saves us, scares us straight, scares us into our humanity, because we are most definitely not masters of the universe that can do whatever they want. I completely agree with New York Times writer David Leonhardt, who in a recent article calls for a Manhattan Project for alternative energy or a national effort to reduce carbon emissions. But despite the terrifyingly potential damages that climate change will encourage, we are not stirred to action. We got to get over that. We must do better. Do you think so? How about you over here? I was looking at them. Which means at the very least that we avoid getting sidetracked. One way of getting sidetracked is to interpret nature's wildness as a mere ploy. Just a few days ago, talk radio host Rush Limbaugh I didn't anticipate that response at all. He said that the problem is not so much climate change as it is the certain illusion of danger created by the liberal media. News stations, he says, use graphics to make it look like the ocean's having an exorcism, just getting rid of the devil here in the form of this hurricane, this bright red stuff. But why? Well, he says to scare people into believing in climate change and to line the pockets of businesses that sell emergency-related goods like batteries. I hasten to add that this did not stop Rush Limbaugh from fleeing Florida like most everybody else. Now, no Houstonian or Floridian in their right mind could ever believe what Rush Limbaugh said. But then I worry about folks who live far away from the coasts, whose weather right outside their door is just fine. And so to those folks, I say, look at those pictures. Look at those videos. Take in some of Thoreau's tonic, taste horrible all the way down. But we must regain respect for nature's wildness. We must know that it is no ploy. It is no political tool. It is real. And nor is it a cover for the apocalypse. This is yet another way that too many people are getting distracted from reality, from what's going on. And I say this in light of a particular Twitter tweet that's making the rounds right now. It goes like this: the solar eclipse was on the 21st, and Harvey showed up the 25th and started flooding on the 26th. Now, look up Luke chapter 21, verses 25, 26, which reads, "And there will be strange signs in the sun, moon, and stars. And here on earth the nations will be in turmoil, perplexed by the roaring seas and strange tides. People will be terrified at what they see coming upon the earth, for the powers in the heavens will be shaken." And this tweet concludes with a short statement essentially suggesting that the apocalypse, as foretold in the Christian scriptures, is unfolding around us. It is not so much storms and winds and surges intensified by climate change as it is God working through the storms and the winds and the surges to call unbelievers to repentance and ultimately to end the world. Now, there is a sense these days in which a person could be forgiven for interpreting things apocalyptically. The pileup of disasters has been incredible. Did you hear the whininess in my voice? The pileups of disasters. It's been relentless. I mean, are you feeling me? I mean, and not just natural disasters, but the situations in Charlottesville and North Korea, they are truly horrifying. And yes, there was that total eclipse of the sun. How many of you saw that? How many of you saw that? Did this scene of true natural wildness make shivers run up and down your spine like they did for me, even though I was sweating up a storm? It had the feeling of the uncanny, right? Never seen that happen to the sun before. Now, the dots here could totally be connected in such a way that the story center becomes that of a supernatural drama beyond human control or influence. And see, that's the real problem. You know, evolution already makes it difficult for humans to wrap their minds around climate change, as I mentioned a moment ago. But now we have God adding to the difficulty. Now, I am not an atheist with regard to all conceptions of God. But I am definitely a proud atheist with regard to this conception of God. Atheism in this context is liberating. Atheism in this context is empowering. I am not going to let God interfere with what I can do, which is to get my act together around recycling. I mean, it's kind of funny, but actually it's really true. To stop eating so much meat, to do other things which will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so I can do my part in that work which we all need to be engaged in. I can't help but quote philosopher Bertrand Russell at this point. You know, he once said And if there were a God, I think it very unlikely that he would have such an uneasy vanity to be offended by those who doubt his existence. Maybe God, if there is a God, is like the wildness of nature, which is neither affected nor offended by human attitudes. God will be what God will be, just like the stars, just like the sun. 163 years ago, Henry David Thoreau published Walden, and he told the world what it meant for him to conduct his experiment in sustainable living. I went to the woods, he says, because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, to discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live that which is not life. Living is so dear. And if he were alive today, I would also ask him to write, I went to Houston after Hurricane Harvey because I wished to live deliberately. I went to the Oregon wildfires to front only the essential facts of life. I went to Mexico to see if I could learn what the earthquake had to teach. I went to Florida to make sure I was not living what was not life. Life is so dear. Because this is how we learn what it means to be human, not just from walks in the woods or garden flowers. We need to witness our human limits transgressed. We need to take the medicinal tonic and be healed of our self-importance. We need to respect wildness and go in fear of it and in awe of it if we are to truly find in it a home. Amen.